Oh, I can't be wearing a green hoodie with my green screen. All right, welcome back everybody. My name is Tucker, and in today's video, we're gonna be talking about the NBA All-Star Game because I think this might actually be one of my favorite All-Star games ever, and certainly one of my favorite out of the more recent ones because mostly of all the changes that they made to the game this year. But really quickly before we get started, if you enjoy the NBA, then consider subscribing. I upload basically every single day. I'm looking at you, person that watches my videos every day but isn't subscribed. It really does help me out. I would appreciate it a lot. All right, so going into the All-Star Game this year, things were going to be a lot different. And the point of the changes was to try and make the game a bit more competitive, right? Because traditionally it has been about seeing all of these really good players on the floor at the same time, but it hasn't always translated to a really competitive and compelling game. So coming into this All-Star Game, the changes made were, in terms of the actual game, the first three quarters, I swear, every time I try to explain this, it sounds so much more complicated than it really is. The first three quarters are individual in terms of score. The prior quarters' scores don't matter. So the first quarter, second quarter, and third quarter are all individual. And whichever team wins that particular quarter gets $100,000 towards whichever charity they chose. And then once you get to the fourth quarter, the cumulative score is added together. You add 24 to the winning team score, and whoever gets to that first wins. The fourth quarter is untimed. That sounds really complicated, but obviously it really wasn't, unless you guys thought it was. That's something I'm really interested for this video in particular is your guys' thoughts on specifically the new format, and if you felt confused at any point, and if maybe that was a downside to this change. Because I feel like a lot of you guys would understand it pretty easily, but maybe someone that's a bit more of a casual fan that just turned on the All-Star Game is wondering why it's 8 to 10 in the middle of the second quarter in an All-Star Game. But anyway, the whole point of these changes, like I said in the beginning, was to make the game feel a little bit more competitive, right? And I think it was an overwhelming success in general, right? Like the first quarter wasn't particularly close, but the second and thirds were both really close. And there was a moment, it was at the end of either the second or the third quarter, in which both teams were calling timeouts to, draw up an end of quarter play to try and get the lead and to try and win the quarter. I know one of them ended up ending in a tie, but that's something we've never really seen in All-Star games before, because in terms of the total score at the time of the quarter that I'm thinking about, I can't remember which one it was, the score was like 8 to 10 points apart. So really it wouldn't have been that big of a deal in general. And at times, one team or the other had a pretty significant lead overall, but within that particular quarter, it didn't really matter. And it was actually really competitive. Like these guys, they weren't trying as hard as they were in the fourth quarter, which we'll get to in a little bit. But in parts of the game that typically wouldn't have been as competitive, these guys were really competing and playing hard and playing defense. And that is such a more interesting setting to watch these guys play. Like there's obviously going to be highlights, there's going to be lobs, there's going to be cool dunks. Chris Paul is going to catch a lob. Devin Booker is going to get a putback dunk. Like those kinds of things are going to happen in an All-Star game. But what makes it more fun is when guys are actually trying and giving effort. Now you're not expecting them to give 100% in an All-Star game on every play. Nobody wants anybody to get hurt, but you want them to be at least going like 85, 90% and not just like standing out of the way while people get free dunks and layups. And I feel like this new format for the most part was really successful in getting that through the first three quarters. And it was about as even as you could possibly have. Each team won a whole quarter, and then they tied one of them as well, which is the one where they were calling timeouts and things at the end of the quarters, which led to a fourth quarter that I can't remember who was up to begin the fourth quarter, but it was relatively close. And I think they were playing to 157. So the fourth quarter starts, and pretty immediately it's clear, like these guys really, really want to win this game, and it's a huge deal to them, to the point where I was a little bit concerned that someone might get hurt. I don't know if anybody else felt this way, but I was watching the game and I was like, man, I really hope nobody, like goes for a loose ball and hurts their finger or even worse, messes up their knee or something. Like these guys were really, really giving effort, especially in the fourth quarter, which is good. But part of me was maybe a little bit nervous about them getting injured. But overall, that fourth quarter was probably the best All-Star gameplay that we've seen maybe ever, and definitely in a long, long time in terms of the recent iterations of the game. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that the game ended on points and it was untimed, right? Like you knew that if you started to take some possessions off, it would have ended really quickly and you couldn't, there was no time to end up coming back. And we had a pretty competitive, fourth quarter last year, and that was something that people liked about the game. But I do think that this, I think Elam ending is what it's called. I do think that this ending that they kind of took from the basketball tournament and other things lends itself really well to a competitive end of the game, especially in an All-Star game. And I'd like to see them expand upon this potentially in the Summer League and things like that. And it really felt like an actual NBA game with all this talent on the court by the end of that fourth quarter. And that's what you want it to feel like. I think it was Russillo that tweeted something like, the guys were arguing with the refs and something else, and all the game needs is a trade request, and it would feel just like an NBA game. And again, I think that should be the goal. You want the All-Star game to feel as close to a regular NBA game as possible in spurts with all of this talent on the floor, because that's what people want to see. Like the highlights and stuff are cool, but you really want to see these guys compete. Man, I can't talk. And that is, really the essence of the All-Star game when it's really good. And I think this was fantastic. Now, of course, because it's me, I have to talk about a few issues that I did have with the game overall. Again, one of them, I kind of mentioned it earlier. I was a little bit concerned that maybe they were playing too hard in the fourth quarter. I mean, guys were getting fouled at the rim, and I don't know. I wanted to be competitive, and it's this weird balance, but the minute that someone even misses like 2 weeks due to an injury from the All-Star game, then we're going to be like, okay, maybe we shouldn't be as competitive, and it's going to be this weird balance. Because at some point, if they're going to be playing that hard, it's going to happen. Freak accidents are going to happen. And I understand that can happen regardless, but it's more likely when guys are going this hard and playing this hard. And so that was one minor concern for me in the fourth quarter for sure, is this is really great until someone dislocates their finger and is out for 2 weeks when they're trying to push for the playoffs. So one concern there. The other, and I'm not really sure how to fix this or how to remedy this, but I really don't think that the game should end on a free throw, because the possession that Team LeBron ended up winning, there was a lot of pressure around it. It was really cool. People were like, oh man, who's going to make the final shot? And it was a little bit anticlimactic that Anthony Davis just tried to seal inside, and he did get fouled, and then he missed the first free throw, made the second to get to 157. And I don't really know how to remedy that. Like if you get the target score on a free throw, the other team should have a chance to match. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you guys have some ideas in terms of how to fix that, or maybe you don't think it's a problem in general, but in terms of the game having a satisfying conclusion, I feel like it should end on a bucket. And I also don't know if there's like a win by 2 or win by 3 rule, and if there is, maybe there should be, I don't know. But in general, I really like the ending. Again, just two minor issues. And then the last point that I want to make here is, this is why I love the NBA. This is one of the many reasons why I love the NBA. They are not afraid to try new things, whether it's changing the lottery odds or multiple different changes to the All-Star game format. Other leagues will say things publicly and say, hey, this could be an issue, we're looking into some things. But the NBA actually takes action, and they say, hey, let's try some of this stuff in the G League, or let's try some of this stuff in the Summer League, or let's do something different in the All-Star game, because we want people to be interested and we want it to be competitive. The NBA does a better job than any other league in the world of making sure that the product that they're putting out and the league that they're putting out is engaging for their fans, whether it's the offseason with all of the free agency stuff and how much that's promoted, or how many events are now televised, whether it's the All-Star draft or the draft lottery or the regular draft. So many things are televised, and there's so much fan service and so many things that the fans do enjoy that I think that's what makes it potentially the best league in the entire world in terms of entertainment value. And these changes to the All-Star game are another example of that. So I want to applaud them, Adam Silver, anybody else that was involved in these changes. This is why I love the NBA. It's not just, hey, we're going to talk about it, but they actually come up with new inventive ideas. And overall, I think this was a success. Yes, there are some tweaks that they could potentially make down the road, but this is what the All-Star game should look like. Guys are, going pretty hard in the first 3 quarters. There's some highlights. They want to win each quarter because they're competitive. And then the fourth quarter, they really ramp it up, and we really get to see what a true, all-star game potentially looks like, and maybe even, almost a finals level, a playoffs level atmosphere and competitive bar as well. So really, really interesting to see that play out. And I had a couple of guys too that I wasn't really expecting to enjoy in this game as much as I did. Like Nikola Jokic was really good. I loved watching Ben Simmons. He had a couple of really cool lobs and dunks. Obviously the Chris Paul lob and the Devin Booker putback. This was, I would say, and you guys can disagree here, or like I said, I'm really interested to see y'all's thoughts on the rule changes in the game in general. For me, this was my favorite All-Star game. I'm going to go ahead and say ever. I mean, it's definitely my favorite in a long, long time, but I'm going to go and say it's my favorite All-Star game ever from a competitive aspect. And overall, I thought All-Star Weekend was really good. I don't remember the last time that we had this many storylines and this much entertainment out of All-Star Weekend. I mean, the slam dunk contest, you could say maybe was interesting and entertaining for a couple of wrong reasons if you felt like Aaron Gordon got robbed, but then you finish it off with a really satisfying conclusion with the All-Star game, and now we're ramped up and ready to go for the playoff push in the NBA. So overall, I think this was an incredibly positive experience for the NBA. It was really critical that they got it right, not only from a competitive standpoint, but I thought all the Kobe stuff that they did was really tasteful and really well done. And overall, this was just a really successful weekend for the NBA, and I applaud them for the changes and for looking into just trying new things, and at the end of the day, making the All-Star game and All-Star weekend that much better. But yeah, there you have it. That is going to be the end of today's video, and I thank you all very much for watching. Once again, my name is Tucker. If you missed any of my previous videos, then be sure to check out the boxes on screen. Thanks again, and I'll see you all next time.